Welcome to the Sewn Assembly. Step by step, I'm going to show you how to assemble this top. Don't worry if the top in your kit looks different or you purchase something that is a different style. Rest assured that the steps will still be the same. So first things first, we need to unbox just to make sure that we have all the necessary pieces. You can check this against the instructions that you will have received. If you think there's something missing, feel free to reach out to us. The first part we're going to tackle is sewing the bust pieces together. To create a seam, we need to be pinning the right sides of the fabric together. This is the surface of the fabric that would be facing outwards if you were wearing the garment, as opposed to the part that's, touching your skin. If you've decided to sew this by hand, well done, I love that. These kits were specially designed to be able to do that. We are going to be using a back stitch, which is different from a running stitch because if you turn it around, this is what it looks like. Essentially, you're backtracking every time you pull the needle through. This is a lot more forgiving if your stitch lengths are not so even, as there's a line of thread at the back. With all of the patterns, we are working with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. If you're not confident with eyeballing it or don't want to constantly measure, you're able to use a light pencil on this fabric. But please don't press too hard. Once you're done with the seam, tie a knot. And this is what it looks like at the back. You can see in this demo that we ran out of thread and we had to start another one. That is totally fine. This is what it looks like if it was done on a machine. I was so inspired by vintage dresses and nightgowns. So many of them had hand-stitched details. So instead of looking at this like it's wonky or there are imperfections, I think we need to remember how clothes were made and that they could still last all of those years. So now we've done the bust, we want to move on to attaching the underbust to the front panel. Now, one of the challenges that you may have come across when you were pinning your bust pieces together is that sometimes the fabric doesn't feel like it fits, and this is because it's a curved edge, and that's completely normal, that you may have to keep teasing and adjusting it. And if you would prefer to use a basting stitch, which is a larger stitch that you later unpick as opposed to pins, I fully recommend. Again, we're using a 1 centimeter seam allowance and we're using a back stitch if you're not using a machine. Make sure you're pulling your thread all the way through. This is because it affects tension and this is the furthest your seam should split. And this is what it would look like on the bust. You can pause this video now if you need to complete the other side. Once you have both your bust pieces attached to your front panels, it is time to attach them to the back. With the right sides facing each other, pin along the edge. If you're ever confused, just flip it over and check your work. Once you're happy, you can sew it together. And then press it open. You'll find that with sewing, if you're new to it especially, that you are going to be doing a lot of ironing. This is what it looks like with all of the seams sewn and pressed open. Next up, we're going to be hemming. Basically, any edge that has the overlock seam still exposed is going to be folded in at 1 centimeter and pressed down. You can use pins to secure this and then sew it down. As this particular style already has the lace attached to the bust, this demo now is just going to show you how we've done the same for the bottom of the top, before pinning and stitching. And now we're on to our straps. At one end of the bust strap, it's folded in at 1 centimeter and pinned to the front of the top. I strongly recommend that you stick to the original placement just so that it is actually secure and you don't have any accidents, aka wardrobe malfunctions. And yes, if we're still sewing this by hand, we are using a back stitch, preferably with double thread as it's now thicker fabric. And for the shoulder straps, we're doing the exact same thing, folding in the ends of the straps twice, so it's a total of 1 centimeter that's tucked in, and then this is pinned into place. The correct measurements of where to do this according to your size can be found in your written instructions. However, if your style of top doesn't have adjustable shoulder straps, for example, one that you can tie up yourself, you're going to need to get your shoulder measurements. Ideally, you would like to get somebody to help you pin the strap where it's comfortable, first measuring from the side seam to where the strap should end. You can either mark this out lightly with a pencil or use a pin. You'll also notice that the straps are at an angle. This helps with the fit because our shoulders are often sloping. So pinning that into place or again marking it out with a pen will be helpful. And then making sure that both left and right sides match up. If you don't have someone to help you, you can achieve this through trial and error, through first measuring the strap of a camisole top, for example, and then trying it on and making the appropriate adjustments. Also want to make sure that it fits nicely at the front. And once you're happy with the fit, you can go ahead and sew that by hand or on a machine. The straps may be too long, in which case you're welcome to trim them down and sew them so they're not flapping about. After trimming any long threads and a steam, you are ready to wear your Sewn Assembly top. Congrats on creating your very own garment. Really hope this inspired you to make more in the future.